This is breaking news.
Happening right now, New York City schools.
High schools. This year, we are both increasing access to communities who have been historically locked out of screen schools and rewarding those who work hard academically and make it to the top of their middle school class. So I want to be very clear. We are not eliminating screens. Like gifted and talented programs, the previous administration sought to take these opportunities away. I have heard overwhelmingly across the city, parents have asked us to increase opportunity, not take it away. So under the model that we are moving forward with, and based on community feedback across this entire city, the top 15% of students in each school and the top 15% of students citywide, based on their course grades, not standardized exams, will be given first access to screen schools. I'm going to repeat that. Our new policy is the top 15% of students in each of these middle schools and the top 15% of students citywide, based on their course grades, will be given first access to screen schools. So by acknowledging those who excel academically in each school, we increase the diversity of students while demonstrating to students that hard work pays off. I have to tell you, I've been engaged with lots of communities on this issue. Lots of families, people have very strong feelings about this issue. At the end of the day, we have settled into a place that if a young person is working their tail off every single day, and they get a 99 average, and they're seeking to go into one of these screen schools, that ought to be honored. I don't want to de-incentivize hard work. I think it's critically important that if you're working hard and you're making the grade, you should not be thrown into a lottery with just everybody. And so we're making sure that we're providing the right incentives and that hard work and academic rigor and excellence will in fact be honored in this administration. Too often the discussion about our city's high schools gets reduced to a couple of dozen schools that only serve a fraction of the city's more than 900,000 students. And while these are all excellent schools, the singular focus on them creates a sense of scarcity in our city. The idea that those are the only good schools, I think, hurts our students, our families, and our educators. So today, I brought some great school leaders to show off the diversity of high-quality schools that we have in New York City. Please join me. Please just introduce yourself. I want everyone across New York City to know these are principals from some great schools across New York City.
Hillary Mills, the co-principal of the Metropolitan Expeditionary Learning School in Queens, New York.
Stephen Jackson, the principal of Aviation High School.
Hazel Joseph Roseborough, principal at University Heights High School in the South Bronx.
Maggie Bailey Tang, the principal of Gaynor McCown Expedition Learning School in Staten Island.
Colleen McGann, the principal at Young Women's Leadership School of East Harlem.
Scott Molcheski, principal of Hillcrest High School, Jamaica, Queens.
Jared Mabry, principal of Passelia Cruz Bronx High School of Music.
Noah Lansner, principal of Brooklyn Prep High School.
Benvenuto Ferrone, principal of Pelham Preparatory Academy in the Bronx, for a high school with a college view.
Rashad Mead, Eagle Academy for Young Men, principal, Brownsville, New York.
Good morning, everyone. Grace White, the proud principal of Bronxville High School, Bronx, New York.
Chanel Thomas Daly, principal of Brooklyn College Academy, Early College High School, Brooklyn, New York.
China
want to thank each and every one of you, and I wanted you to introduce yourselves to New York City. And I hope that this is, in fact, carried, because you all represent what we're talking about when we say there are many high-quality schools in New York City that are not often talked about. The principal standing with me leads some of the most unique high schools in the city, and I want more New Yorkers to know who they are and the great work that they're doing. And it includes the Celia Cruz Bronx High School of Music, led by Principal Gerard Mabry. This is the first performing arts high school dedicated to music in the Bronx. This school represents the diversity of its community while graduating 98% of students and providing programming that acknowledges the incredible talents of students from the Bronx. Thank you so much, Principal Mabry. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
The Young Women's Leadership School in Manhattan, led by Colleen McGeehan. For 25 years, the city's first public school serving young women, building a tight-knit community and engaging older students as active partners in co-constructing advisory lessons for younger students. Every day, they create the next generation of young women leaders that our city needs. Thank you so much, Principal McGeehan. The Gaynor McCown Expeditionary Learning School on Staten Island, led by Principal Maggie Tang, where they put community service and citizenship at the center of everything they do, while providing students with not one, but 2 dual enrollment programs in partnership with St. Francis College and the College of Staten Island. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for being here. A man of which I don't even need any notes, Principal Richard Meade, the Eagle Academy for Young Men in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, the preeminent school that is focusing on young men of color. The most challenging demographic that we have in New York City are black and brown boys. And it's a work that he has not run away from. He has led for well over a decade. And I just have to thank you for the work that you continue to do. And I want everyone around New York City to know the fine work that you're doing at the Eagle Academy. And finally, very close to my heart, Hillcrest High School, Queens, New York, led by Principal Milcheski. It's my alma mater. And he is leading the way in what it means to create opportunities for students who learn real-world skills that prepare them for good-paying jobs after high school. Just yesterday, we announced a partnership with Northwell Health, our state's largest private employer, to develop the healthcare workforce of tomorrow right there at Hillcrest High School. The Hillcrest High School is not necessarily a school that you hear on a daily basis in the news, but it is one of the best schools in New York City. And I want everyone around New York City to know that. They produced a chancellor who turned out, pretty well.
Pretty good.
And I'm immensely proud because Hillcrest was a place where I found my voice, where I learned to lead. I was the vice president of the senior class. To this day, it's the greatest moment of my life. And it continues to do that great work. And that's the great work that's happening across all of these schools. Wake up, New York. Phenomenal work that is happening across New York City. It's not just 4 or 5 different schools. These outstanding schools represent both screened and unscreened high schools, but even these schools do not represent the totality of excellent options for our families. The changes we announced today make it easier for families to find schools like these that best fit their child. We are committed to continuous feedback on this process. Most importantly, these schools work hard every day to give every single young person who enters their front doors a high-quality academic experience, regardless of their ability, where they come from, or how they got here. These leaders don't do it for accolades or the chance to stand next to the chancellor. They do it because they are great educators, and this is the work that good educators do every day across New York City. So many of our students enter school with unseen barriers in their way. Those students thrive when they have caring educators, social workers, and other supports in place to lift them up. That is why we expanded community schools. investing in programs that set up students for long-term economic security, and reimagining how we give students a strong foundation in literacy and best supports our students with disabilities. I'm guided in thinking about admissions by my own personal history in our schools. When I was a young man growing up in Brooklyn and then Queens, my family sought the best possible educational options for my brothers and I. We moved from Brooklyn to Queens, seeking a better life, and then sought schools that would give us that opportunity. Even if it meant, as it did in the 7th grade, that I had to take 2 buses that took a total of an hour and a half to get to 7th grade. Nobody should have to do that. But my parents ensured that we did it because they were locked in on ensuring that we got the best school option available. We need to make sure that there are great school options right around the corner, and that's what we're committed to doing. We actually have really good school options today, as represented by all the folks you see standing alongside me. We must help our families see the great numbers of high-quality options available to their children. There are excellent options, and we want to make it easier to find them. We believe that these improvements in the policy open the door even further for students of all backgrounds who are academically successful. And we know we must do more to provide more high-quality options to our families. So today I'm further announcing that by next September, we are going to open 3 more academically accelerated high schools in the neighborhoods that have been most cut off from great access: the South Bronx, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and Southeast Queens. We will actively engage each community to develop what these schools will a long-term commitment to our students. We will provide excellent educational opportunities, and we will make access fair, accessible, and transparent. It's a new day. Thank you, and at this time, we'll take any questions.
We'll go to Mike Alciferri from Jockey. Hey, Chancellor.
How are you?
Good. First off, can you give us a sense of how many streams high schools are going to be using this top 15% cutoff, and what happens if there are more students in that tier than seats available?
Sure. Sarah is here as well. Maybe we'll have Sarah to come up and join me. Sarah Clown-Handler, who's the head of our Office of Student Enrollment, who's been leading this entire initiative. But we have approximately 120 screen schools across the city, and so those are the schools that much of this announcement will be focused on. What we just talked about was essentially Tier 1. So the top 15% of those students, whether you're top 15% in your school or across the city, will be the ones who will fill up most of those seats. To the extent that seats are not filled, we move into the 2nd tier, and we will continue to move beyond that. Sarah can tell you a little bit more. It's important to note that that Tier 1 is not simply the top 15%, but there's a cutoff. That cutoff is at least at the 90% level. You have to have a 90 GPA. And we did that for a reason, because we do believe in high standards, and we do believe that there are academically talented students who are achieving at a high level at schools all across the city. And we wanted to make sure that those options were available to all of them. But for a little bit more detail, Sarah, just tell me a little bit more about how the other tiers are working as well.
So, hi everybody. Yes, so after the 1st tier is full, we go right to the 2nd tier, which is below 90, and so on and so on. We tier down. If your question was how will the 1st tier be placed in schools?
Well, so like how many students are projected to be in that 1st tier? How many seats are available? And what if there are more Tier 1 students than seats available?
So we've reduced the tier quite a bit from last year to this year. Last year, about 60% of students were in the 1st tier who applied to high school. This year, we've reduced that to about 20% of students who will be in that 1st tier. We listened carefully, and we made that modification. We can get back to you on the number of seats, for sure, to answer the second part of your question.
Thank you. We're going to go to our student reporter, Jathan.
And I just wanted to ask what this top 15% policy, do you believe that it will lead to more academic segregation in the school system, and how does this help students that already struggle, schools that already struggle to attract high-performing students?
It's certainly my hope and my expectation that it is going to increase the level of diversity because it is a 15% marker that is open to schools all across the entire city. Now, that being said, I want all of our students to work really hard to strive to get into the highest numbers that they can possibly get into. I do not accept the notion, which has what has been presented to me, that Black and Latino students don't score above 90, that they're in the 70s and the 80s, and so we've got to make sure we're providing opportunities for them. I don't accept that as a premise. I think we have top-tier academic students, and I want them to continue to work to be top-tier students, and I'm essentially saying this is a threshold of excellence, and that's where I want all of our students who are seeking to be in those schools. Many of the schools that you see here today are not even those screen schools. And these are all phenomenal schools, which is part of the reason why we wanted everybody to be here with us as well. You may not go to Stuyvesant, you may not go to Millennium, and you may wind up going to Hillcrest. And that's a great option as well. I want us to get away from this notion that, again, there's only a handful of schools that are worth going to. That is absolutely not the case. And I'm going to continue to preach that message because many of our families have walked away from our schools and our school system because they're not aware of all these other great schools. And I think if they knew more about these schools, and we're going to be doing a lot more work to lift them up, to celebrate them, to highlight them, that they are just as an essential part of the school fabric as any of these other screen schools and specialized high schools as well.
Hi, Chancellor.
Hi.
Not to belabor Mike's point, but how are students being selected from each tier? Let's say there are 100 seats in a high school and 200 seats, 200 applicants who are all in tier 1. Are they selected in rank order? Are they selected at random? What happens? How does it work?
So we're using 7th grade core course grades, grade point average, and they will be ranked randomly.
Okay. So if I have a 98 and another student in that same tier has a 96, that's not going to make any difference. They're ranked randomly.
That's right, yeah. There were a lot of people who suggested to us that we do a straight rank order. 99 gets in before 98. We did not go that far. We thought at the very least, if you were making a 90 average in any school across New York City, you're a top-tier student. You're working hard, and you deserve to be rewarded for that. And so they were all going to kind of go into a pool to be selected randomly at that point. Last year, the cutoff was lower, and we got a lot of pushback that the pool was so large that there were a number of students, and there were students with 99, 98 averages who didn't get into any of the choices that they were looking for. This process, I think, will ensure that more top-tier students, the students who have achieved their grade point averages at higher levels, get into the schools of their choices. It doesn't guarantee you a seat, but it greatly increases the odds. You have to remember, if many schools, if you've got 10,000 students with a 95 average and they all want to go to one school, everybody's not getting in. If that school is only taking in 150 kids. So by definition, it is a lottery. And that's why we encourage students to apply to many schools. There were some parents and families who said, my child didn't get into any of their choices, but they only selected 2 choices. They have an opportunity to select up to 12. So you can't select 2 and then say, I didn't get into any of my type choices. There are other great schools, and that's what we want to encourage people to apply to as many of the great schools as you possibly can. One second before you go. It is also important, Andrew, before we go, is to note that our criteria has nothing to do with state exams. It's grade point averages. We had a lot of pushback about state exams. I also believe that state exams have a level, can be flawed in terms of some of these admissions criteria. But I'm a much bigger believer in grades. And that I think that grades over a period of time do give us a much stronger indication of students' abilities. And even students who've gone through the pandemic and have had traumatic experiences in their lives, I think over a period of time, your grades are still a very solid indicator of how you are showing up as a student. And that's what we're going to lean in. There is no perfect criteria. We're just doing the best that we can. Andrew?
Chancellor, the previous administration tried to get rid of SHSAT and also, as a top stated goal, tried to desegregate the New York State school system. Can you talk about why you think their approach was the wrong one?
Well, I'm not going to lean in completely on that. What I will say is this. I think the fight over specialized high schools has been fought many times over during these past number of years. The mayor has made it very clear that's not a fight that we're leaning in on. The fight that we want to lean in on are the folks who are here. We want to lift up these other schools and ensure that New York City is very clear about those schools. And many of these schools are wildly diverse. And I think they will become increasingly diverse if we celebrate them, if we highlight them, if we tell the city that they exist. This idea around segregation often centers connected to this scarcity model. We're talking about 5 schools, as though they are the representation. We have 1,800 schools in New York City, many of them tremendously diverse. So we will continue to engage with our superintendents and our principals to increase the level of diversity, whether that's racial diversity or just particular demographics that people come from, making sure that all of our students with special needs are well represented across all of our schools. There's a wide range of diversity. So this is not the end. This continues to be the beginning. When I got here in January, I was faced with making a decision right away. And I just worked with the limited information that I had with a very small amount of time. We spent more time since I've been Chancellor engaging communities. And I think our policy today really does represent what a lot of the city has said. You need to understand, the whole world lives in New York City. And there's probably no city anywhere that has the range of diversity of thought and ideas and opinions. And we have some people right now who will be very disappointed that we have any form of a screen. I get it. Then there are others who think that screens should absolutely be an option. And I get their position as well. There are those who thought we should not have gifted and talented programs, that they were racist by definition. I heard their point. And there were others who said, absolutely not. We want gifted and talented programs. My job as the Chancellor is to hear this broad range of thought, idea, opinion, and then try to make the best decision that I can possibly make. So guaranteed, no matter what, when this announcement is made, there will be a whole host of advocates and others who will be deeply disappointed. And I understand it, I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, somebody had to make a decision. That's the decision that we made.
Morgan from Southside. Thank you. So obviously the report shows that students' math proficiency has seen a decline. Do you guys have a plan to tackle this to help boost those numbers?
Yeah, I wish I could turn to each one of these principals right now and ask them, what are we going to do? Just know this. We've seen declines, even in ELA, not as significantly. The math decline was very significant. And I think a lot of that, what we're kind of surmising from that, is that learning virtually had a greater impact on math than it did even on ELA. And I think there are reasons for that. We're still figuring it out. But you know, sometimes it's harder to engage kids in the way that you really want to engage them mathematically, working on problems, the reading that's connected to the math as well. So it was a significant decline in math, not just here in New York, this is all across the nation. So the reality that we're facing is that we've had these losses. To me, it was not a newsflash. I don't think anybody thought that our scores were going up during the pandemic. We had a lot of families who opted out of the exams altogether. But I think to some degree it misses the point as well. The state exams are important. And everybody that you see here today, they work hard every single day to try to increase the scores. But I think you have to remember, before the pandemic, we had a lot of kids who were failing in this system. So we can't talk about this as though, you know, things were working well before. Rashad Mead and I, the body of work we did before I became chancellor, heading up the Eagle Academy Foundation, where 65% of black and brown boys never achieved proficiency in this system. The system has been flawed to a great degree well before the pandemic ever happened. So what we are about is trying to reimagine how we are engaging young people in this schooling experience anyway. We've not been doing school well in far too many of our schools. We've not provided a relevant connection for why kids go to school. That's why Scott Milcheski is here. That's why we made the announcement with Northwell yesterday. Hundreds of thousands of internships and apprenticeship opportunities that can be provided to young people. Young people need to know, why am I going to high school in the first place? Where is it supposed to lead? From pre-K through 12th grade, as a system, we spend over $350,000 per student. Think about that. Every taxpayer in New York should be asking themselves, what is our return on investment? And I would suggest to you, it's not just the fact that you pass a math or ELA exam. We want young people to have real skills. We want them to have the ability to come out of high school, whether they go to college or they go into the world of work, with credentials, with skills that they can take their rightful place in the 21st century economy. That's what the mission of this administration is primarily focused on. So I'm not trying to just do school better. I want to reimagine, and all these people here are reimagining the school experience along with me and our administration. We have to do it better. So I understand and appreciate the point about the scores. I know that's a lead story, but what we are all about is something much larger than that. We owe it to all of our young people. We owe it to our families. We owe it to New York City to produce young people who can take some of the jobs that you have, who can take the job and become the chancellor, become the mayor. We have far too many young people, they have no idea how city government even operates. They don't understand the ins and outs of financial literacy, how money is made in America. And you know why? Because we're too busy doing school. I want to make school relevant and meaningful so that young people have their aha moment and say, that's why I'm supposed to work hard in math and science and all the things that we do. That's what we're trying to do, create a greater degree of relevant education. That will help all young people and will help our entire system and our city.
Last couple of years, we'll go to Juliet from 10 Yes, hi, good morning.
Hi.
Is there other criteria other than grades in the selection process?
You want to wait? No, it was really just the grades. If you have some other suggestions that would be helpful, we would.
Curricular activities, you know, sort of like a resume that a kid would. That's a great point, and we should look at how to consider some of those. Some of those things become a little bit more challenging at scale when you're talking about so many hundreds of thousands of kids. But I appreciate that. We do have a few of our screen schools that have some additional criteria. But as a larger system, we thought looking at the grades would be the strongest indicator for us. But we're certainly open to considering other factors as a go-forward strategy. Thank you for that. Hi. Can you talk more about these accelerated learning academies? What's meant by accelerated learning? What we're going to focus on?
You know, when I grew up in Southeast Queens, my mom and dad moved from Brooklyn to Southeast Queens, solidly like working class to middle class neighborhood. Everybody basically owns their own homes, and we found that the schools were the middle schools were terrible. And the local high school was not a good local high school. Most of the kids that lived on my block avoided the middle school as well as the high school. Mayor Eric Adams left his neighborhood to go to Bayside High School, right? I loved Hillcrest, but the local high school was Andrew Jackson. It was 2 blocks from where I lived. And everybody in the neighborhood said, we're not going to Jackson. Why? Because it did not have a good reputation. The local middle school did not have a good reputation. And that community has cried out for some more programming for students who are accelerated learners. And we don't want them to have to figure that they have to leave and go to all parts of the city to find that. We should be able to provide those opportunities in their own neighborhoods to make those at least options
for them. And so we want to continue to do that, and that's what that is about. We're looking at 3 very specific neighborhoods of Southeast Queens, South Bronx, and Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and we won't stop there. We are going to continue to respond to the needs and the demands from the community. It's the community that has said these things to me. It's not everybody in the community, but we've heard that as a pretty solid drumbeat. And this administration is trying to be as responsive to the communities as we possibly can. I don't stand here in front of you as a chancellor who's an ideologue. I'm standing as a representative of the community to help respond to what the community is looking for. And I'm always open to listening and to learning and understanding that from one community to the next, people have extremely varying views about all of this. And so we're trying to be as responsive as we possibly can. There is no perfect answer, but we do believe that the announcements today will further where we're trying to go and further the goals of this administration.